Mr. Wahab Shittu joins us now. He's a lecturer in law, University of Lagos, and also a legal practitioner. Thank you for coming on this morning.
It's my pleasure to be here.
Well, it's interesting because, I mean, you know, there are a lot of people who, looking at this fight against corruption, just dismiss it with a wave of hands, saying, well, same old story. But you, a lecturer in law, also a practitioner, you see both sides of the divide in terms of the perspective of law. Because what happened recently, where Justice Achibong really talked about those 5 SEN leaves, raises a whole lot of questions. Some say even dust. How could that happen? Is that corruption in courts or what? What was your perspective when you even heard it?
Well, my own perspective when I heard it was one of shock. Because if you look at the profile of the lawyers who were involved in the case, they rank easily among our best in this country. There's no way anybody can describe J.B. Daudu, what was his name? J.B. Daudu.
Yes, Emmanuel
Ukala.
Koinsola Ajayi.
Dr. Koinsola Ajayi.
Kola Udeyi.
And A.B. Mahmood as professionally incompetent. These lawyers rank easily among our very best. And I think, but again, one cannot dismiss what has happened just with the wave of the hand. I think it calls for some kind of judicial inquiry to find out what transpired. Why did the judge take the position he took in the case? And why did he suddenly label this gentleman as professionally incompetent? These are facts that ought to be investigated. So until we have the real facts on the table, I think it will be preemptive to pass any judgment. But as I sit here, I am utterly in shock at the judgment, at the indictment of those eminent senior advocates.
Part of it was that he said they should not appear, was it before other courts, and one wonders, can that actually be the case? Can that happen?
Well, again, I also find such order very curious, with due respect to the learned judge. But you see, a judge has the jurisdiction to be right, as well as the jurisdiction to be wrong. And until that judgment is set aside, it remains a judgment that is binding. But that does not mean that we are not entitled to agree or disagree with the judgment. Because you find out that whether for a judge to give a ruling or an order that no such case should be instituted in any federal high court, for me is overreaching. And because the head of the federal high court is the chief judge of the federal high court, and he alone has the discretion to assign cases, not any other judge of the federal high court. But again, we are learning every day. This is a new jurisprudence, and I think when a pronouncement such as this is made, we owe it a duty to test it further by way of appeal in order to be able to determine. But speaking seriously, I saw the caption this morning, corruption in the EFCC, and
with a question mark.
With the question mark, and I said, well, is the hunter suddenly becomes the hunted? And it's very, very funny because you see, I think we should approach this issue much more seriously. Corruption is not the business of EFCC alone. It's a collective business. It's the business of all of us. So I think we should treat the activities of EFCC with some measure of understanding. I'm not here seated holding brief for EFCC or ICPC. But I'm speaking as a Nigerian who is concerned about the progress of this country. And there's no way we can make real progress in this country if we do not confront the monster called corruption. We all know that the major impediment to the developmental process is this issue of corruption. Again, we also have to face the fact that corruption is not peculiar to Nigeria. It's a phenomenon that is worldwide. It's just the degree that varies. And all are agreed that for any country to move forward, then you must reduce corruption to the barest minimum.
But part of the way that we're approaching it, because we had some of these cases that are being thrown out now in the courts, You had the case of Akingbala, you had the Lumelu, of course, Iberi also. Some even predict that the next one will be that of Atuchi, and you never know if they will be right. But some lawyers have spoken up about this, saying they were not properly investigated. But in all of these cases that were dismissed, could it actually be that investigation was not thorough and then prosecution contributed to that being thrown out?
I think the best way to look at it is to look at it holistically. I think the problem has to do with the fact that we have a system in place that is not strong enough. Our institutions are weak. Our systems are not strong enough. We have collapsing ethical values, moral and ethical values. In fact, we have a decay personal behaviors, and our institutions are and our social traditions are also collapsing. I think so. What I'm saying, in essence, is that we need to strengthen our institutions. If we strengthen our institutions, then investigation will be thorough. There will be put in place what I call the integrity of the process. Our judiciary will be what? Strengthened. Because whether you look at it, it's not a blame that you put solely on the shoulders of one institution alone. Because the investigative process, I agree with you, must be very, very thorough. There's no need for us to say because of public, outcry, then we rush to court and then get failure at the end. When somebody is accused of any offense, it should be properly what? Investigated.
Yeah, but even as weak as they seem to be, or as they may be,
yes,
the cases that have been before the courts, if they have been perhaps dispensed with some verdicts coming down, guilty verdict, of course, people won't be crying out loud as they are now.
I think again,
cases spend how many years in court? We have politicians boast. We'll meet in court and we'll stay there forever.
I think again, you're right, but I think again, you should look at the challenges confronting the legal system in our country. We have the challenges of delay in the administration of justice, which is something there. The challenge of what? The challenge of corruption, and then sometimes long adjournments and all that. But again, what we should insist upon is that when somebody, we should not rush necessarily what? To court. We should ensure that things are done properly. Now, EFCC is being maligned, attacked, sometimes fairly, sometimes unfairly. Because we must also appreciate the challenges that EFCC has had to contend with. Sometimes some of these cases, because of public pressure, are necessarily rushed to court. I am aware that EFCC has done a lot. In terms of a lot of cases have been prosecuted successfully. Some of these cases, what we should be talking about, so what are the statistics?
I was actually going to come there, Mark, sorry a moment, because when you talk about a lot of cases, some would say it is quite subjective, an argument for anyone to contend with. Okay. But look at this now, someone saying that the chairman was told, there's a quote now, and advised to investigate how some of the commission's lawyers, good enough you're a lawyer, have been engaging in sharp practices, collecting money from accused persons to water down their charges. How true can that be, and how well is there any kind of likelihood that we can actually get some lawyers, compromise all of the effort of the EFCC?
That is serious enough, very serious. But I think we must admit the fact that there is the possibility of compromise in every stage of the process. Not just lawyers who are prosecuting are capable of being compromised. Even police officers who are investigating may also be compromised. Apart from that, those who are sitting to determine these cases, some of them may be compromised. But what is important is to ensure the integrity of the process. A system should be put in place to monitor the activities of those who are investigating, in order to ensure that they are doing things transparently.
How can we do that when we already feel as a nation we have a case to pursue, and we are just given that the lawyers who are supposed to be doing their jobs know what to do, and you say we should also take time out to watch those lawyers and see what kind of job they're doing.
That is the point I'm making. You do not surrender the business of prosecuting corruption just to EFCC alone. What you are doing alone is part of the effort. When somebody is assigned to investigate a matter, for instance, before he is assigned, his pedigree must be thoroughly investigated to find out where is he coming from. What is his track record in terms of integrity? Again, after you assign him to investigate, there must also be a mechanism to monitor what he is doing. Now, if you assign cases to a lawyer to prosecute, the fact that you have assigned the case to the lawyer to prosecute does not mean that you should hands off. You should find out what he is doing, whether he is deploying integrity in the process. And again, if you are a lawyer and you are found to have compromised your position, there should be a mechanism to bring you to book.
Allow me for a minute, but sorry, it's not quite difficult a task for the commission to also find out, to know if this particular lawyer has some kind of conflicting interest, because they say there are some cases where the lawyer, the prosecuting lawyer, also is a lawyer of that same accused, maybe his business or his enterprise or some of his affiliates.
Yeah. I'm aware that the EFCC and is very, very careful about its choice of lawyers. I'm not saying that all lawyers engaged by EFCC are totally free from corrupt influences, like the EFCC chairman mentioned in the case of the staff of the commission. But I'm saying that lawyers who are chosen to prosecute EFCC cases are lawyers carefully chosen and whose activities are constantly being monitored. And I'm aware that there's a constant review of the performance of these lawyers. And those of them who are seen as performing below expectations, most times, their services are judicial. For instance, this Justice Charles Achibong's matter that you have just mentioned is of serious concern to the authorities, including EFCC. We want to find out whether indeed what Honorable Justice Charles Achibong said about those lawyers are merited. So I am aware that the investigation is going on. So all lawyers who are involved in prosecution are constantly put on their toes. But I'm saying beyond this, all institutions, all stakeholders must show interest.
And what goes on there?
What goes on there? Not just leaving it for EFCC, and when there is sudden failure, then you blame everything on the EFCC. This corruption is a collective.
You've been a part.
The media, everybody's involved.
You've been a part of the EFCC prosecuting team.
Yes, from inception.
From inception.
Yes.
What exactly has been your greatest challenge?
Well, the greatest challenge is the delay in the administration of justice. And that is why we have toyed with several other options, like plea bargaining and some other options. And this delay is totally unacceptable.
In other words, it's not. Chimlin earlier trying to separate, the processes, yes. Investigation, prosecution, and finally getting justice. It seems that, again, where the EFCC has always pointed its fingers is where you've also found your greatest challenge in the profession you practice, and in the judiciary system, in the legal system, as it were. What can we do?
I think what we can do is to strengthen the integrity of the process. And when you strengthen the integrity of the process, you ensure that the institutions that are involved, the police, the judiciary, and all the lawyers, are governed by, prepared by the integrity of what? They are driven by what? Integrity.
Okay, so
and how do you do that?
In this case, what you seem to be saying is that the problem might not exactly be at the courts, but as to how people approach the courts?
I think, honestly, that the problem is collective. There's no one institution that can say, oh, I'm totally immune or free from blame. You understand me? And I said we will look at it from that perspective. We might be missing the point. Those who are investigating must do their jobs much more thoroughly. Those who are prosecuted must do their job with a lot of integrity. The defense lawyers too, who are assigned to defend this accused person, must know that primarily they owe a duty to the administration of justice.
Yeah, but it's like a tripod, because if you say the commission must do its investigative jobs properly,
yes,
the defense counsel, because on a regular basis they meet, don't they suggest that, well, if you have to get a judgment in court, these are the kind of things you should look out for? Doesn't that happen between defense lawyers and the commission?
Well, defense lawyers are retained by accused persons to get them off the hook.
Sorry, prosecuting lawyers.
Prosecuting lawyers, we meet regularly, we compare notes. We are more concerned with what is going on in the marketplace. So we see how our operations can be strengthened. At the level of the commission, I'm also aware that the commission is very, very concerned about the quality of prosecution. Sometimes we have suggestions have been made that perhaps some of these charges, the volume of these charges may have to be reduced. For instance, there's no use, arraigning somebody for 107, 170 count charges. When you can prune down these charges to a reasonable level.
Who does that? Isn't it the prosecuting lawyers?
The prosecuting lawyers. So I'm saying that even amongst prosecutors too, we are talking to ourselves. We are meeting.
Was it a strategy before now? Maybe, some people have said, file as many charges, and it's one of them.
No, you see, there's no prosecutor who will go to court without being convinced that there is some degree of, offense being committed in relation to some of these charges. There are several kinds of charges. But we are saying that part of the strategy to move the process forward, perhaps maybe to pull down some of these charges, and then also ensure that those who are, in times past, for instance, we have a collaborative agreement through which some judges noted for integrity over the years are selected to handle these cases. I'm aware that Justice Olubumi Oyewole, for instance, in Lagos, and some other judges like that of his category have been penciled down in the past to handle some of these corruption cases based on their track record.
And sorry, it's also in the news that because of the last big case he handled, he was also penciled down not to handle such cases anymore. So he has gone under the radar to the extent that no one hears or knows anything about him.
So, but the question is, are we raising such questions? Are we as a people stood up to defend such a person?
Why should that case?
Why should that happen? I'm saying that we shouldn't surrender this issue to any institution. It's a collective institution. You are doing your own bit today, right now, by bringing some of these issues into public searchlight.
But the question is, who should? Because, I know that it's come to the fore before. Last time we had former chairman of EFCC here, Mrs. Farida Waziri. She was talking about how she protested that particular transfer when he was moved from to a family court, as it were, to handle family matters, from criminal matters to family matters. Someone who granted justice within a record time. The case was done with in a record time, was moved to a family court. That's where he's. And she said she protested that. But when we asked, we were told that that's normal. It's the prerogative of whoever does the posting to post anybody anywhere, and it's not about punishment.
Well, I am not aware that any punishment is being visited on anybody. I don't have the
but
facts.
It's suggested.
So what I'm saying is that the fact that cannot be denied is that while Justice Olubumi Oyewole presided over corruption cases, he discharged his duties without fear of favor. And that does not mean that he should be consigned to the handling of just corruption cases.
Yeah, but some say
right now
that meant he was spoiling business for some people by doing it in record time.
That is also in the realm of speculation. But what I'm saying is that.
Yeah, but why was he?
But that's in the realm of speculation. I won't sit here and pass such a judgment. But what is important is that if we notice any foul play, it is our duty, collective duty, to raise our voice.
But did you notice any foul play? Was there any foul play, or can we suspect foul play enough to raise our voices? I think that's the question here, because if it's absolutely normal that a judge reports that after he's delivered a landmark ruling, as it were, who should know better? Shouldn't
the lawyers?
No, the question is,
know better?
Are we suggesting, for instance, that it is only Justice Olubumi Oyewole who has integrity? in the judiciary?
No,
the answer certainly is no. You understand me? But what we're saying is that a judge like that, noted for integrity, should be encouraged. And we have a lot of them like that all over the place.
And encouragement is not by posting him to a family court?
Well, except I have the facts. Why he was posted to a family court. But I'm also aware that he's doing an excellent job where he is right now. He's doing an excellent job where he is right now. But the point that we have to also make is that we need to strengthen the system by ensuring that we identify those crop of judges noted for what? Integrity. And then we also set up special courts. And then we also ensure that those who have rendered valuable services are rewarded. And if we suspect that an attempt is being made to punish anyone because of his principal stand, collectively we should rise. So I'm saying that we should shift emphasis from placing the blame just at the doorstep of one agency. It's a collective responsibility, because we all know that this corruption is the major impediment.
Yeah, but when you say when sudden failure comes, it's suggestive, because some wonder, oh, so it means that if prosecuting counsel is expecting a verdict and all of a sudden it comes upon them that, well, sorry, this case is thrown out, or we can't prosecute anymore, we can't go further with this case, does it suggest that something goes on behind the scene that brings about this sudden failure?
You know, cases, for instance, again, people have to be properly educated about the effect of certain judicial pronouncements. For instance, the later judicial pronouncement on Erastus Akimbola does not mean that EFCC can still not proceed to file fresh charges if they find, if they are convinced that there's a case. The case of Otumba Gbengadare does not mean that that case is dead. I'm aware that EFCC has also filed fresh charges because those cases were thrown out on the basis of technicalities.
You know why people are
and for every case that is thrown out, for one reason or the other, there's a useful lesson to learn.
Yeah, Mr. Shittu, one of the lessons is, you know, a particular case in point where everything was actually dismissed and we felt that this gentleman had gone free. Those same evidence were actually used elsewhere, specifically in London, and we saw what happened to that case. That is why people are a little bit skeptical when it comes to judiciary, when it comes to...
It comes down
yes.
to the point I earlier made, that we need to emphasize the integrity of the process, the integrity of investigation, the integrity of prosecution, the integrity of adjudication. Everything has to be emphasized, and that we can do if all of us enlist in the fight.